So good morning, everyone. Our lesson for today is all about sexual and asexual reproduction. So we have here the objectives to differentiate the asexual from sexual reproduction in terms of number of individuals involved and similarities of offspring to parents. All forms of life, starting from the simplest to the most complex, possess not only the ability to survive, but also the instinct to reproduce. So these are the characteristics of life, the ability to survive, and also the ability to reproduce. So later you will learn this in your higher levels. Reproduction is the biological procedure by which new offspring are produced from their parents. So reproduction must involve a parent in order to produce an offspring. It is an important feature of all known life that each individual organism occurs as the product of reproduction. Most importantly, reproduction is needed for the existence of species. Why do you think? Okay, so we need to reproduce in order to be existed, right? Okay, so the identified methods of reproduction are generally grouped into two main types, which is the sexual and asexual reproduction. So that is our lesson for today. We have the types of reproduction. The first type is asexual reproduction. From the word itself, asexual. So there is a prefix a or a, which means absence. So meaning of asexual is absence of sexes for reproduction. Okay, so it occurs when only one parent produces an offspring which has the exact genetic makeup with the parent. This type of reproduction mostly occurs in single-celled organisms such as bacteria, some multicellular organisms such as fungi, and some plants. Okay, when we say asexual, the reproduction comes from only one parent. Take note of that. Only one parent, and then it will produce a copy which has the same features from its parent. Okay, so it occurs in single-celled organisms such as bacteria. So I know that you are very familiar with this. And when we say single-celled, these are also called unicellular organisms. And some for multicellular organisms such as fungi. And for plants. Okay, so now we will go to the different methods of reproduction in the asexual reproduction. Okay, we have different types of asexual reproduction. We have first vegetative reproduction. So this is a form of asexual reproduction in plants that occurs when a new plant develops from a fragment of a parent plant or a specialized reproductive structure. So for example, we have rhizome, tuber, corm, and bulb. So I know that you have learned this in your previous grade levels, like in your grade 5 to grade 6 levels, right? I know that you're very familiar with rhizome. So for example, this is for rhizome, we have ginger. So it reproduces from, or the process is for the vegetative reproduction. Okay, we have another example here, the cactus plants, which can reproduce through its leaves. So for example, if you're going to cut off the leaves of the plant and then you will put it in the soil, then it will reproduce by or through its leaves. Okay. The second one is the binary fission. So the cell divides to form two identical daughter cells. When we say identical, they have the same features or the same face or the same gender. But for this, it mostly occurs in the unicellular organisms. So each daughter cell grows until it becomes as large as the parent cell. So that one example for this is the amoeba cell that reproduces by dividing. The amoeba divides itself and then it becomes as the same size of its parent cell. You hear the for that. So this is the cactus plants and it uses vegetative reproduction. And for letter B, we have amoeba. So we have here, we have the cytoplasm and nucleus of the amoeba, and then it will be split into two daughter cells, and then there you go. They have two amoebas, as the result for dividing. So they have two daughter cells. Okay, another one is budding. So new identical individual forms as an outgrowth of the parent. The outgrowth detaches from the parent and becomes a new individual. So for example, we have yeast, hydra, and sponges. And another one, we have spore formation. So spores are stored in sacs called sporangia. When the sporangia bursts open, many single-celled structures called spores are released. So under favorable conditions, these spores develop into a new identical organism. So I know that you're very familiar with this. One example is the bread molds. So this happens when when the bread was stored in a few days left untreated or left opened, so it will develop a bread molds, and thus the molds reproduces through spore formation. We have here the example. So this is the reproduction of hydra by the process of budding. So we have here the parent hydra. So it develops, and then it develops into a bud, and then there's a new bud, and after that a new hydra is formed from a parent hydra. And for the second one, we have the spore formation in the fungus. So, for example, we have bread mold. You have here the hyphae, or the roots, and then the sporangium, and that sporangium will burst, and it has a spores, and then it will fall down into the soil, or in any medium. We have air or whatever. So that spores will produce another fungus. Okay. Another asexual reproduction is through regeneration, from the word itself, regenerate. Okay, so severed parts of the organisms grow into another organism similar to it. For example, we have when a hydra is cut into several pieces, a process known as fragmentation. Each piece can grow into another hydra, and in certain types of starfish, an arm that breaks off from the body can grow into a new individual. So, are you watching SpongeBob SquarePants? So we have here the Patrick the starfish, and if that starfish would be cut, or uh, Patrick the starfish would break his arm, it will eventually grow into a new individual. It will regenerate. Okay, we have here the asexual reproduction through the starfish as the representative. So it completes itself with a piece of regeneration that breaks from the star body's living body, and then it creates a genetically similar new starfish. So even if you cut a lot of this, for example, you cut um, 5 pieces, so it will regenerate into 5. Okay, so I think this is the most what you call this most this starfish, or this kind of asexual reproduction, will have more reproductions if its body will regenerate. And now let's go to another type of reproduction, which is the sexual reproduction. So it involves the merging of genetic information from two individual parents to produce a new organism that is a combination of both parents. It occurs in most complex organisms. So this is very familiar to you, because we humans are the representatives of this sexual reproduction. But it also occurs in plants and also in animals, in most complex organisms. So we have different ways on how representative microorganisms, plants, and animals reproduce sexually. The first one is conjugation. Through conjugation, it occurs when two organisms of the same species temporarily unite to merge one organism's contents along with its genetic material with the other. One organism is left with an empty shell while the other becomes a new individual. So one example for this is the Spirogyra or the green algae. So this is the an example of the conjugation process from the green algae. Okay. Another one is through pollination. So this is very familiar to you because this happens in the plants. So it combines the male and the female gametes of a flower, and it happens when a pollen grain of the right kind lands on the stigma of the pistil. For example, we have bees transfers pollen of a male flower to the female flower. Have you seen this in the squash plant or in any flowers, right? So this is through the process of pollination when the bee is the transfer medium in order to transfer the pollen of a male flower to a female flower. Another type of sexual reproduction is fertilization. This is common for us humans. A type of sexual reproduction that combines the male and female gametes of an organism to form a zygote. By the way, what are the gametes here? We have the sperm cell and the egg cell. Sperm cell from male and egg cell from female. For example, we have humans reproduce through fertilization. Okay, we have here the pictures for pollination. We have the gomamela plant, and the pollen grains are transferred by a pollinator, which is the bees, into another, into the stigma. And for the fertilization, we have the female and male gametes will fuse each other, and then it will form a zygote, and after that, it will form an embryo. Okay? Okay, that ends our lesson for today. Thanks for watching and listening. I hope that you have learned something today.